So with that, let's talk about really the crux of phase two, which is helping people to practice and expand their skills in eating a healthy dietary pattern. So let's start with, for me personally, the fruits and veggies become just a foundational behavior, but for me, the superstar of my plate is often my lean protein. Anyone else feel that way?
Right
Boy,
there with you, Rick.
oh yeah. So say a little bit more about lean proteins. What do people need to hear about this incredibly important food group as they're building skills in phase two?
Yeah, I think, it's an exciting thing to bring in. A lot of patients are working with some of these things already built into their HMR entrees, and now you get to prepare your own version of them. And it's exciting. It's highly nutritious. There's a ton of value behind it. I think it also, provides them an opportunity to create a new relationship with food. Because I think when we work with patients, we want them preparing it. We see our HMR community group on Facebook light up with what they're putting on a plate. Like, keep that going in phase two. Like, be proud and take ownership of what you're putting on a plate. And obviously the big thing is managing how much you're having. And we talk about fruits and vegetables and making that the most dominant thing on the plate, and you're set.
Yep. I just love the flavor that you get when you really dive into this world of measured portions of lean protein. Tony, what comes to mind for you in that area?
Oh, whew.
I
I'm
know.
excited, and now I'm getting hungry too. But I think of proteins, lean proteins, as just an untapped area for a lot of our clients. I think that when they start to discover the flavors that can come from, reasonable amounts of protein complemented by all these amazing veggies and whatnot, I feel like that's a revelation. And I do see the proteins as kind of a scaffolding, kind of a way to start to build new behaviors. Like Adam said, you start to visualize where they belong. That's why I love the transition process while they're learning, what's a reasonable portion, what can I work with here? And then it becomes this kind of personal way to manifest that with all these wonderful flavors, and having a little bit go a long way when it's, pumped up with lots of volume and fruits and veg. So I feel like that's one of those big aha moments that's so fun to watch in phase two.
Totally agree. Yeah, it really is an ongoing process of discovery, isn't it? And again, you start with those measured lean proteins. There's just so much variety, so much flavor, more than people can even imagine. One of my first questions that I ask people when I'm helping them to transition to phase two, I just pick one category, subcategory. Do you like fish? And when people say yes, I say, well, we're going to be able to come up with a new fish or preparation strategy for the next month without you repeating a meal. And that's just fish. It doesn't even talk about the lean poultry and the other sources of lean protein as well. Kim, anything else that you'd say in addition to what we've talked about here with the lean proteins?
Absolutely. I would say, it can be helpful to get a scale and really measure your lean proteins when you're first starting out, so you can get an idea of what a serving size is. And if you don't have a scale, then just using the palm of your hand to kind of gauge, the serving size. And lean proteins are a good way to start because proteins are a high satiety food. They keep you full for longer, and if you pair that with some non-starchy veggies with a lot of volume, you've got a nice, filling, satisfying meal. And it's different than what you're having in phase one, but still low calorie.
Absolutely. Great. All right. So continuing to sort of peel this onion called a healthy dietary pattern. You're keeping up phase one behaviors, keep the decisions low, keep the structure in place. And we've just talked about lean proteins. Let's talk about another food group that just can add so much variety and taste and enjoyment to our meals and snacks. Grains. Measured portions of grains. I mean, what do we often hear when we talk to people who have lost weight, when we talk about adding grains in? This is an area that people can be a little bit scared of. Have you guys heard that? I'm sure many times through the years.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. The concern is the fact that those grains, unlike the proteins, they somewhat spill onto the plate. It's easy to just eat more of these. So people tend to associate these with weight gain, but it doesn't have to be that way. Now, we talk about these as measured portions of grains. And of course, when we think about health, preferably whole grains. We'd like to really have people sample different types of whole grains to see which ones are palatable to them. What else would you say about using grains as the next addition to a healthy meal? Tony, whether it's what you talk about with your clients and members in the program or your own personal use, what comes to mind when you think about grains?
I feel like this is an area where there can be a huge paradigm shift in our clients because, like you said, I believe that, well, I think you used the term, these spill onto the plate. I think that a lot of people have a sense that some foods in this category have power over them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is a great opportunity for them to learn to take the charge out of those foods. And like Adam said earlier, change a relationship with these foods. And so here's where I think not just us as coaches, I think the class is such a great resource because they can relate and share strategies of how they've been able to manage, whether it's through portion control and or environmental control, get a shift that goes on here so that, guess what? Rice isn't your Achilles heel anymore, or bread isn't, what takes you down every week, so shifting those paradigms. This is an area that I've seen people who don't even recognize themselves after that relationship starts to change, but it can be a long process and glacial at times, but we're giving them those first steps to begin to change that relationship.
Yeah, beautifully said. Kim or Adam, anything else you want to add about the grains, just to sort of embellish more the whole perspective that would be useful for people?
Yeah, I would just say, keeping in mind that there are grains in the entrees, so essentially you're making your own entree. I've even coached some patients to keep those entree containers and make sure that you could fit the grains and your lean protein in that container, but really just thinking about the proportions, and in the standard American diet, half the plate is the grain, and we're teaching you to do maybe a quarter of your plate grains.
That's right. And it's not like we ask people to eat these parsimonious little portion sizes of proteins and grains. We've talked about the importance of keeping up a high volume of fruits and vegetables. Portion control, you've both mentioned it, Tony and now Kim. This is important because there are calories in all of these foods, but we approach this through a philosophy of abundance as well, which is when you bulk up your plate with lots of fruits and vegetables, it becomes automatic portion control on your proteins and your grains. So again, the philosophy of abundance that we introduced to people in phase 1, we continue to practice that in phase 2, eating a lot of healthy foods to help you eat fewer of the less healthy, more calorie-filled foods. Adam, what else about grains from your perspective?
You hit it on the head earlier with whole, the word whole, and I think a lot of people think grains and they're thinking of their pre-HMR lifetime, like, oh my gosh, the 3 cups of angel hair pasta with my side of garlic bread. And I'm like, that's not what we're working on, and then, we explore things like, I think all of us, at least I've had a moment where I've had 3 cups of angel hair pasta. Otherwise, I wouldn't have used that as an example. But there's things like quinoa, brown rice. And, we just shared a fall harvest quinoa salad that has the quinoa more as the garnish to the plate, as opposed to the backbone of the plate. It's the recipe I think called for a 1/4 cup sprinkled over the top of it. And as you mentioned, when you have 3-4 cups of veggies in there, there's not much more room for more quinoa. So, I would say if you're nervous about it, explore a brand new avenue to approach grains. Don't go to the bread, even though there are whole grain options. Don't go to the pasta, even though there are whole wheat, options. Maybe you take a whole new experience with that grains, and I think it'll be less daunting.
Yeah, and a lot of people, may turn up their noses at the idea of the whole grains. Tastes are learned. We see this all the time, don't we, in this work? I mean, how many times have you had people who are eating huge levels of fruits and vegetables when you first started working with them said, I'm just not big on fruits and vegetables. I don't like these. I mean, this happens all the time. Tastes are learned, and it can happen with grains as well, whole grains. I will just leave the whole grains. What comes to mind is just the research that's continuing to grow out there. There are the obvious health benefits of whole grains. They're almost like miracle foods. They're more like fruits and vegetables in terms of the health benefits than they are like processed or refined grains. But recently, a couple of different studies came out within, I think, 2 weeks' time about weight management. And, we know that countries that eat more whole grains tend to have lower body weights. But now we're seeing research, and there seem to be two things that I'm sure you guys are familiar with. One is that with the whole grains, which retain so much of what's good in those foods, the fiber not being the least of it, are more filling than the refined and the processed grains. So you can get filled up, but with fewer calories. But then people also, with that fiber, tend to absorb fewer of the calories. So there really have two mechanisms at play here to really encourage people to have an open mind about the whole grains, obviously for the health management benefits, but also for some weight management advantages that whole grains confer as well. All right, so we're talking about really the big thrust of what we do in phase two. We help people to expand and continue to practice a varied, healthy dietary pattern. We've talked about lean proteins. We've talked about grains. What other foods are worth mentioning here in terms of part of a successful phase two experience?
As a dietitian, I'd like to chime in because I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about healthy fats and
Good.
also the reputation, that especially a weight loss and weight management program would have automatically when you talk about fats. So, I mean, I almost find as a health educator, you have to build a bridge to your client first so that they know, look, fats belong, fats are important. They play a huge role in, as Kimberly said, the satiety, but also, of course, with, vitamin absorption and a myriad other things that we need these for. And of course, most of our clients, and maybe ourselves included, have had that fat phobia time in our lives. And we also know from a calorie contribution standpoint what we're working with. So I think that dance is really important, to engage in that with your clients, have the conversations. And as people coming into phase two know that this will be part of the milieu, it will be part of what we work with, and to try to figure that out and carefully help our clients, work with those and change that relationship as well.
Absolutely. Again, beautifully said. Kim, anything else you want to add about healthy fats and incorporating them into an overall healthy dietary pattern?
Yeah, so just backing up what Tony said, also including some low-fat dairy. I think that can be a nice part of a healthy diet. And also, and if you're not, if you're lactose intolerant, then maybe some dairy replacements.
Absolutely. The nutrition research, largely got it right several decades ago, but the one area that really has, with the science that's come out, we really have modified and nuanced our whole view of this, and that is the whole world of fats. Yes, as you say, Tony, they have more calories per gram, so you have to be careful with them, but there are healthy fats and there are less healthy fats. So part of our goal, largely because they add so much flavor to our diet, is to help people to incorporate healthy fats into their routines as part of, again, an overall healthy dietary pattern. Adam, anything before we move off of that on the healthy fats?
Yeah, no, there's just a lot of, obviously there's a lot of options out there, and I think it's much like our protein and grain conversation. There's a thought process behind what you bring into the house, how you're going to use it. One of my strategies is slivered almonds versus whole almonds.
Yeah.
You'll never find me in the living room eating slivered almonds out of a bag, and they're a great garnish to like overnight oats, and I can sprinkle them on a salad, and that's a healthy fat I can manage in the house, but there's certainly others that I can't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you. I have a little spout that allows me to use olive oil in very measured portions, as opposed to how it's so easy to have it pour out of the typical bottle. And I find just very little olive oil, it just seems to add so much to my ability to prepare things the way that I enjoy them most. Okay, going once, going twice. Anything else on healthy fats, or should we move on?